Ben Shapiro is not too happy with Tucker Carlson and the like. There is this divide that is happening, at least among the MAGA podcasters, which does impact MAGA voters, I guess. Candace Owens said earlier today on Twitter that she's not voting today. And she said the reason why is because she doesn't feel comfortable voting until she finds out the truth that happened to Charlie Kirk. Things are changing, folks. And now we see Ben Shapiro is very upset with Tucker Carlson. He mainly goes after him, not as much Candace, but mainly goes after Tucker Carlson because he had interviewed Nick Fuentes, but also he is blaming Tucker Carlson for the divide that is currently happening among MAGA. You guys have got to hear this, and we're going to get into a little bit more of this conversation. I'm going to tell you why they're freaking out.
I want to do something different on today's show. We're going to cover one topic in depth. That topic is, I think, the most important thing happening in the country. It was a hot topic last week, but I wanted to take some time to really gather my thoughts and speak on it in coherent fashion, holistic fashion. That topic is the fragmentation of the political right. That fragmentation is being caused purposefully by a splinter faction of people led by a young man named Nick Fuentes. They call themselves the Groypers. They are white supremacists. They hate women, Jews, Hindus, many types of Christians, brown people of a wide variety of backgrounds, blacks, America's foreign policy, and America's Constitution. They admire Hitler and Stalin. And that splinter faction is now being facilitated and normalized within the mainstream Republican Party. The main agent in that normalization is Tucker Carlson, who is an intellectual coward, a dishonest interlocutor, and a terrible friend.
Okay, so he is saying that Tucker Carlson is an agent in that movement. See what happens when you choose to leave the club. See what happens when you start to disagree and you don't want to repeat their talking points anymore. And you're like, oh, I feel differently about this. See what happens when you get kicked out of the club. So I thought it was interesting at the end of that part, he had to add, and also not a good friend. I can't make this up, you guys. We can't make this up. But Ben Shapiro, he is saying that Tucker Carlson is an agent in this. Because I guess you can't be a part of the same political party and disagree on some of the issues. Is that what this is about? You mean to tell me everyone in the Republican Party agrees on every single thing? Because I've been saying for quite some time, some of them are against the wars, some of them are not against the wars. But this is where Ben Shapiro's going, and I'm going to tell you why he made this video. Ben Shapiro made this video because he is noticing that Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, and others that are anti-war and also calling out Israel for the genocide, they are starting to bleed into the GOP base. It can cause support. That's why Ben Shapiro is making this video. Let me get this out there because some of the young people are starting to say, why are we supporting Israel? And this is becoming a problem. And it's not like it's one person either. There have been multiple wanting to move away from that. That's why Ben makes this video.
And Tucker Carlson last week was aided, abetted, celebrated for normalizing Nazism within the Republican Party by the mainstay organization of the traditional right, the Heritage Foundation. Now, before we explain what's been happening, let's make one thing clear. This is not about free speech or cancellation. It was never about free speech or cancellation. Free speech has a definition, the right to speak free of governmental coercion. I believe in it, of course. I've always defended it. Criticism of bad speech is, in fact, just a form of free speech. Cancellation also has a definition, the banning of particular people, including people like Nick Fuentes, from platforms like X or Facebook. I believe that Nick Fuentes is odious and despicable, but I've never called for his cancellation. And in fact, I've called for his restoration to those services, despite the fact that I think he's odious and despicable. It is not cancellation to draw moral lines between viewpoints. In fact, we used to call that one of the key aspects of conservatism. It is not cancellation to refuse to signal boost Hitler's supporters like Nick Fuentes.
But who decides what the moral lines are going to be? Is that decided by Ben Shapiro? Is that decided by Tucker Carlson? Is that decided by Republican politicians? You see, here's the thing, right? Like we've had this argument back and forth as well when it comes to people who support the progressive policies, the Democratic Party. And then you have the Democratic Party leadership like Hakeem Jeffries, who's also mouthing off again earlier today, says no, Zohran Mamdani is not the future of the Democratic Party. You have the Democrat leadership like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries right now, who are basically saying the party is not moving in that direction. So they're the gatekeepers. In the Republican Party, who's making that decision? Who is the gatekeeper in the Republican Party? Because it almost sounds like Ben Shapiro feels as though you have to agree with all the points that he makes. Let's continue.
It is not cancellation to criticize Tucker Carlson for rhetorically fluffing Nick Fuentes and other anti-American crackpots. It's not cancellation if you urge others to stop promoting those who rhetorically fluff Nazi apologists. Those are all elements of free speech. And anyone who says differently is lying to you, and lying for the most cynical reasons to misdirect from their own defense of those Nazi apologists and their promoters. The issue here isn't that Tucker Carlson had Nick Fuentes on his show last week. He has every right to do that, of course. The issue here is that Tucker Carlson decided to normalize and fluff Nick Fuentes, and that the Heritage Foundation then decided to robustly defend that performance. Those who criticize both Tucker and Heritage aren't canceling. They are quite properly drawing a moral line.
So it's really interesting because Mark Levin did say at the RCP event that Tucker Carlson needs to be canceled. He did say that these people need to go. He said Tucker, Candace, etc. Those people got to go. I don't think Ben Shapiro really has any standing ground to talk about who people should bring on their podcast after he sat down there face to face and interviewed war criminal, genocidal maniac Benjamin Netanyahu. It's just interesting to me. Like all of a sudden, Ben Shapiro cares about like, oh no, race and racism. Really? All of a sudden, this is an issue for you, Ben Shapiro? He goes on to say a little bit more here. It's not even just about the Nick Fuentes interview that Tucker Carlson had. It's the way that Tucker Carlson has been moving since he has, left Fox News. He gets into this here.
Has turned himself into a conspiracist and a crank and a pathological liar. Tucker excuses Vladimir Putin's murderous and barbarous reign. He has even become one of his most ardent defenders.
It is so much nicer than any city in my country. I had no idea. My father spent a lot of time there in the 80s when he worked for the US government and barely had electricity. And now it is so much cleaner and safer and prettier aesthetically. Its architecture, its food, its service than any country, city in the United States that you have to, and this is non-ideological. How did that happen? How did that happen? And at a certain point, I don't think the average person cares as much about abstractions as about the concrete reality of his life. And if you can't use your subway, for example, as many people are afraid to in New York City because it's too dangerous, you have to sort of wonder, like, isn't that the ultimate measure of leadership? And that's true, by the way, it's radicalizing for an American to go to Moscow, I didn't know that, I've learned it this week, to Singapore, to Tokyo, to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Because these cities, no matter how we're told they're run and on what principles they're run, are wonderful places to live.
So I want to say something about this here. Ben Shapiro has a problem that Tucker Carlson went to Russia and had that interview with Vladimir Putin. But I say this, look at it this way. I have watched numerous interviews of Zelensky. I've seen Zelensky everywhere. We didn't see corporate media sit down with Vladimir Putin. We never heard the other side of the story. I said the same thing about Gaza. Like, everybody keeps interviewing Benjamin Netanyahu, but you notice they're not going into Gaza and talking to the people in Gaza. So that's the narrative that corporate media wants you to push. Ben Shapiro sees this as a problem. He's like, oh no, he's trying to be friends and buddies with Vladimir Putin. Or maybe he's giving the other side of the story. Now, we'll also say this. Not many people can go to Moscow and sit down and interview Vladimir Putin and come back to the United States and not get searched or detained or checked. Tucker Carlson has an in where the rest of us don't. So just keep that in mind. Ben goes on.
So I guess you put in 10 rubles here and you get it back when you put the cart back. So it's free, but there's an incentive to return it and not just bring it to your homeless encampment. I went from amused to legitimately angry. So we were guessing what this would cost. Everybody hears from the United States buys groceries, and we didn't pay any attention to costs as we were just putting in the cart what we would actually eat over a week. And we all came in around $400, about $400. It was $104 US here.
Yeah.
And that's when you start to realize that ideology maybe doesn't matter as much as you thought, corruption. If you take people's standard of living and you tank it through filth and crime and inflation, and they literally can't buy the groceries they want, at that point, maybe it matters less what you say or whether you're a good person or a bad person. You're wrecking people's lives in their country, and that's what our leaders have done to us.
Ben Shapiro apparently has a problem with that. But the reality is this. Yes, in some of these other countries, food is cheaper. And some of those other countries, they have natural ingredients in their food. I lived in Europe for about six and a half years. Their food is different. It don't taste the same. It really doesn't. Imagine going to the grocery store and then realizing that, oh, wait a minute, the taxes are included. So I don't get a different price when I get to the register. Some countries have that. Imagine going out to dinner and not realizing that you don't have to tip your waiter because they're paid a living wage. And in some countries, they see that as an insult if you tip them. Imagine buying food that has 3 or 4 ingredients and not 25 on the back of the package. Some of these other countries that we've been taught to hate, they actually have healthy food. They don't have GMOs and all these additives that are put into their food like we do. And then we wonder why they live longer and why they don't have the same health issues that we do. Goes on here.
When Tucker Carlson interviewed Vladimir Putin, by the way, Vladimir Putin was so amused by Tucker Carlson's easy questioning that he actually mocked him. Tucker Carlson has massaged the Iranian dictatorship and admitted to not asking any difficult questions of the president of that dictatorship.
The interview is limited by a couple of factors. One, it was done by remote through a translator. That's always awkward. For another, I don't speak Persian. And there are all kinds of questions that I didn't ask the president of Iran, particularly questions to which I knew I could not get an honest answer, such as, was your nuclear program totally disabled by the bombing campaign by the U.S. government a week and a half ago? There's no chance he's going to answer that question honestly. I didn't bother to ask it. The answer, in fact, from an American perspective, even from the CIA's perspective, is unknowable.
Tucker bizarrely worships at the altar of Qatar.
They're mad at you because you don't put your parents in some institution. Maybe they're trying to break up your families.
Well, it can be a reason. Honestly, I don't know what is really the purpose behind this, but we see that, you know, a lot of things that are happening are attacks on humanity in general.
Let me pause here. I'm getting really tired of the Qatar comment, the Qatar comment. Qatar is an extension of the United States. I don't know why people keep saying this and they're like, oh my God, that person took money from Qatar. There's a big ass US military base in Qatar. It's basically just an extension of the United States. That's what Qatar is. So it's an ally of the U. I don't understand this. I don't know why people keep saying, oh my God, they're in Qatar. He went to go talk to. So no, he's not worshiping at the altar of Qatar. He's having a conversation. I'll be goddamn it. I never thought, if someone would have told me 2-3 years ago, Sabs, there's going to come a time in the future when you're actually going to find yourself defending what Tucker Carlson says, I would have never believed it. But this is where we're at now. This is where we're at now because Ben Shapiro is a freaking moron. If there's anyone who is sitting there worshiping at an altar of another country, it's Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro kissed Israel ass so much, he might as well just live there. I don't know why he lives here. Ben Shapiro feels as though Israel is everything. That's where Ben should be. I don't know why you're here, Ben. I don't know why you're here. Point blank. It's just interesting because, yeah, I remember going through that Vladimir Putin interview with Tucker Carlson, and I said, oh, look, Vladimir Putin's laughing here. He's chuckling with some of those things. We talked about that. But then I also watched Ben Shapiro's interview with Benjamin Netanyahu, and it was just, that was worse. Do I have a problem? Am I more offended by Tucker Carlson's interview with Vladimir Putin? Or am I more offended by Ben Shapiro's interview with Benjamin Netanyahu? Who Ben Shapiro fully supports, by the way, will tell you that it's not a genocide. So Mr. Facts don't care about your feelings. Apparently, that's not true for Ben Shapiro because I've been seeing over the past couple of months, Ben Shapiro got some feelings. Ben Shapiro got some feelings. You don't care. He has a problem that Tucker Carlson went to other countries and talked to leaders that, guess what? Western media doesn't give a microphone to. But I sat there and I watched these leaders say things, and then I researched it for myself to see, let me see if this is true. Surprise, to my surprise, because we've been lied so much by Western media. America is the most propagandized country in the world. We have been told a number of lies. But Ben Shapiro doesn't want to hear the facts. He's focusing on feeling, which is what he told you not to do. Wait till I show you the comments on this video.
It's when you lose the family value, when you lose the connection between the family themselves, you will lose the connection between the people as well, on a broader level, on the people in the same neighborhood, on the people in the same region, in the same countries. And that's basically will just make us, as individuals who are quote unquote independent from anyone, that's what we will feel. Yet it will just make our societies vulnerable and easy to be penetrated.
That's right.
Tucker Carlson praises Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro, even as Maduro keeps the entire country in communist penury and ships fentanyl into the United States to kill Americans by the hundreds of thousands.
Again, Western propaganda from Ben Shapiro. We have told you guys about Maduro on this show a number of times. Western propaganda. So listen to this.
Why are we so opposed to Nicolas Maduro? So if you ask someone on the street, random person, why are we against Nicolas Maduro? The answer you're going to get is, who's Nicolas Maduro? But if you find someone in South Florida, for example, who knows who Nicolas Maduro is, who can identify where Venezuela is on a map, that person will almost certainly say, well, because he's a communist or a socialist, he's exceedingly left-wing. And that is true. Nicolas Maduro and his government are very left-wing on economics, not on social policy, by the way, which is kind of interesting. In Venezuela, gay marriage is banned. Abortion is banned. Sex changes for transgenderism are banned. It's one of the very few countries in the entire hemisphere with those policies. It is on social policy, not defending the regime, just saying, one of the most conservative countries in North or South or Central America.
So Tucker Carlson said right there, he is not defending, right? He said, not defending the country, just explaining to you what is happening in Venezuela and what they're like. And this is a good thing to bring up as well, is that a lot of the Latin American countries in South America, this is true. We've talked to people on the show about this as well. They tend to be more, I guess, more left when it comes to economic issues, but more conservative when it comes to social issues, right? So, I mean, Ben Shapiro would agree with those conservative, opinions about the social issues. What is the problem? I'm just so confused. I don't get it. I don't understand. So where was he worshiping at the altar of Qatar, which is a U.S. ally? Where is he, pouring out this love and respect in defense of Nicolas Maduro? He's just telling you what else is happening in that country that you often don't get to hear about in Western media. That is an open lane. Let me be clear, folks. A lot of times people come to independent media because they're looking for something that corporate media is not giving them. There are certain lanes in independent media that are open lanes that some people choose to, let me look into this, let me look into that, like the gray zone, right? They realized that corporate media was not telling people the truth about foreign policy. That's their lane. Everybody has like a different thing that they focus on, like different lanes or whatever. But the reality is, it's almost like Ben Shapiro doesn't want people to tell people the other side. He just wants one narrative that's pushed out, and that's the narrative that he believes in and supports.
Only El Salvador really comes close.
Tucker Carlson glosses Hamas, the genocidal jihadi group behind October 7th, as a political organization.
You can't claim that they're in Hamas while simultaneously claiming that Hamas is a group of jihadis. They're Islamic extremists, which they also claim constantly, which I don't know if that's true, by the way. It seems more like a political organization, but whatever it is, they're telling us constantly they're Al-Qaeda.
Wasn't Hamas elected? Like, what is this?
Tucker Carlson has attacked President Trump as a cover-up artist for sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein on behalf of Israel and Mossad, making sure, of course, never to mention President Trump's name, because, of course, Tucker's a coward.
And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing hateful about saying that.
Tucker Carlson has stated that President Trump has undermined.
So he just goes through the list of things. And I'm sorry, as I said it before, I don't know, Ben. Why? My question is this: why isn't Ben Shapiro talking about the cover up of the Epstein files? Why did Ben Shapiro try to shoo that away? Well, they said there's nothing to see here, folks. Let's keep it moving, because it would implicate Israel. Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein was Mossad. Mossad is in Israel. That would implicate his precious Israel. That's why. I think those are the questions that people should ask. People should ask Ben Shapiro, Ben, why you aren't talking about those things? Why is it that you're only giving one perspective and you never go get the other side? Almost like you're trying to keep us in this little bubble. We'll go to another part here. He talked about this for quite a while. We're not showing the whole thing. He'll drive you crazy.
Charlie's death, TPUSA made Tucker Carlson one of its chief faces. Tucker, of course, spoke at Charlie's memorial, where he implied that hummus-eating nefarious Jews killed Charlie, with no mention of the ideology of the actual alleged murderer, who was, of course, a trans activist gay furry. Tucker Carlson, in fact, has spent more time talking about Jews and Israel since Charlie's death than about the trans-Tifa ideology that motivated Charlie Kirk's killer. By a long shot, it's not close, which is not a surprise, since he seems to spend very little time these days attacking anyone on the left.
Mr. Don't focus on identity politics has to bring up identity. He always has to do this when all else fails. First of all, again, I told you guys, I have not seen any evidence that shows that Tyler Robinson is the killer. I haven't seen any evidence that shows that Tyler Robinson even acted alone. It's kind of weird that Kash Patel didn't want people to look further into that to see if there was any foreign intel that was attached to Tyler Robinson. I mean, all these cover-up things, it's very easy, but Ben Shapiro says this is the narrative that came from Kash Patel and the Trump administration, so I'm just going to echo those talking points. Ben Shapiro might as well just go work for Fox News. I don't get this. You're not alternative media. Ben Shapiro just echoes those talking points. I think he should just go work for Fox News at this point. It's sad. But Tucker Carlson did respond to Ben Shapiro. So I do want to show you what he said. He was on Dave Smith's podcast. The first part that I want to show you here, he was talking about Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, and Seth Dillon. So let's get into this part.
People like Ben Shapiro and Josh Hammer and Ted Cruz, all these people, like, they think in terms of groups. And that's what Levin said to me. It's like, my group, people are hurting my group. And it's like, if your group means your family, people you love, I get it. But if you're thinking purely in terms of your ethnic group, which is what he is saying, then you inevitably become very hateful toward other ethnic groups, actually. And in Ben's line about Ron Paul, who's like totally committed to nonviolence, by the way, you see that hatred. And so it does, I don't like it. I'll just get right to it. I'm not afraid personally. I'm not going to talk. I didn't grow up like in the world that, Seth Dillon grew up in, where you were encouraged to like talk about yourself all the time. Like, narcissism was a true sin that I I never talk about, I try not to talk about myself in general, but I know a lot about, people trying to hurt me, been there in a real way, and which I've never talked about, not going to talk about now, but I'll just say, I know what that is. And I know that, people like Seth Dillon or Ben Shapiro, they get a lot out of wearing bulletproof vests and like, oh, I'm so under attack and all this stuff. And it's like, the truth is they are openly pro-violence. So how in the world could you justify killing tens of thousands of children or justify a pager attack, which is an act of terrorism where you indiscriminately blowing people's genitals off? You don't know who's holding the pager. And you're...
Let me pause here for 1 second. One thing I will say is this. I think something that Tucker Carlson does not do is he does not call out the corruption. He doesn't get down to that part, right? Like he'll tell you, okay, I don't agree with all these people being killed in Gaza. What is this about? Why do we have this allegiance to a foreign nation, like Israel? But he doesn't get to the corruption piece. And the answer to that question is because of the money. If you follow the money, then you'll know why the US has the relationship that it has with Israel, right? It's not just AIPAC, it's Kufi. It's also J Street. It's all the, Israel lobby interest groups. But then on top of that, you're talking about Wall Street lobbyists as well, military industrial complex lobbyists as well. They're all in on this together. It's not just AIPAC, right? So I feel like he doesn't get to that part. He doesn't get to the corruption, right? So that part there is missing. He's asking the right questions, but he's not going to the extent of, oh, wait a minute, this is why it's happening because of all this corruption and all the money that's behind it. Let's go on a little bit more.
People like Ben Shapiro and I know that, people like Seth Dillon or Ben Shapiro, they get a lot out of wearing bulletproof vests and like, oh, I'm so under attack and all that stuff. And it's like, the truth is they are openly pro-violence. So how in the world could you justify killing tens of thousands of children or justify a pager attack, which is an act of terrorism where you indiscriminately blowing people's genitals off? You don't know who's holding the pager, and you're celebrating it. What are you celebrating? You're celebrating violence, and they celebrate violence day after day. That's where their foreign policy comes from. That's where their worldview is. Strangling the neck of a Jew, who even thinks that way? Someone who's thinking very often in violent terms, and so and hateful terms. That's hate, and so people like that. When aroused to hysteria, and I feel sorry for them, and I just want to say that again, Lindsey Graham, another violence worshiper, like the idea that they're promoting violence, well, they've been promoting violence for decades because this whole project is about violence. It's about the thrill that they feel killing their enemies, the godlike power they imagine they have when they extinguish human life. That's the whole game for them. And
But I will add also, Lindsey Graham is doing what he's paid to do. Lindsey Graham takes money from a lot of corrupt, companies and industries and lobby interest groups. So he's doing what he's paid to do. That's the piece that I think Tucker should add to go along with this. It's not that these individuals are stupid or foolish or they just don't understand. No, they totally understand. And they made a decision that they were okay with being corrupt. They were totally, okay with that and just willing to bite the bullet for the money.
We shouldn't you're not promoting violence? Oh, you're definitely promoting violence. And that's why I oppose you.
And there's another piece here where he does issue an apology. Tucker Carlson did apologize for what he said about the evangelical Christians. You guys need to hear this part as well.
But I just want to say at the outset, because this has been weighing on me, I did say something that I really regret saying that I didn't fully mean. I said it because I was mad, which is always when I say things I don't really mean. When I get pissed, my wife's always telling me this. I was snippy and I didn't explain it. And I said something to the effect of, I despise Christian Zionists. And I'm just sorry that I said that because I don't. I'm mad at a certain kind of thinking. Some of the nicest people I know are Christian Zionists, actually. If you're in a car crash, they would save you. If you need someone to watch your bank account, they wouldn't steal from you. They're like really good people and sweet people. I want to be very specific quickly about what I was talking about. In at least a couple of different occasions, the Israeli government bombed churches in Gaza and killed a bunch of Christians. And not an accident, of course. I mean, this is like a very high-tech military with precision. I mean, they, gave pagers with bombs in them to Hezbollah. So like this is a military, a national defense institution that understands what it's doing. They didn't accidentally bomb 2 churches and kill these Christians, and they never apologized for it. And so I brought this up with a couple of Christian leaders, and including the Speaker of the House, and said, like, what is, we're paying to bomb churches? Because we're paying for it. And the response I got from every single one was, the Bible commands us to support Israel. And I said,
this is the one that drives me the craziest, right? Because anybody can say that, right? But we have separation of church and state in this country. And 2, the Bible isn't talking about that Israel either. Like, people have honestly taken the Bible and they've twisted into what they want it to be to support their foreign policy agenda. That's really what has been happening here. Israel wasn't the place, the modern day Israel that you see today. The Bible is not talking about these Europeans moving to the Middle East and taking over and taking out the indigenous people there. They're posers. See, they want to say that part, but they won't say this part as someone who grew up in the church. They won't say, the Bible also tells you that there will be those that come in my name and they are not me. There will be those that come in my name. They say that they are me, but they are not me. They are posers. And these are the things that we have to point out, right? All the people keep saying, well, the Bible says, point to it. Show me. And then we can go back to what I've said before as well. How do we know that the current Bible that you are reading has the correct interpretation of the original Bible? How do we know that all those scholars that sat down with King James for the King James version of the Bible, how do we know that they put everything in there? How do we know that it wasn't compiled in such a way to suit a Zionist agenda? That's the question that people need to ask. And that's the question that I think that Tucker Carlson should ask, instead of here saying, well, they're really nice people. Nah, they support genocide. That's not a nice person. Like, you don't have to apologize. I don't understand this. Well, I want to apologize for that. I don't mean that. They're really nice people. No, they're not. Anyone who sits here and supports a genocide of an entire group of people are not nice people. They're just not. Let's go on a little bit more here.
So Jesus is telling us that we need to get on board with murdering Christians. Is that what you're saying? And they basically were just like, shut up. And I found that extremely, as a Christian, extremely upsetting. And I've never kind of gotten over that, but I should have said that. That's what I was talking about specifically. We cannot support the murder of innocents. I don't care what the pretext is. That is not allowed in our religion. And if it is, then it's not my religion. That's not what the New Testament says at all. It's not even a close approximation of what it says. There's no justification for that in the New Testament, period. So I am distressed. I don't hate. I shouldn't have said despise, but I'm very distressed about that. And that's specifically what I was talking about. So I just want to apologize sincerely for not being clearer.
One thing I will say is this. One thing that I think Ben Shapiro was right about here, which is that Tucker doesn't want to point the finger at Donald Trump. He doesn't. I've noticed that, right? Like, he doesn't want to point the finger and put the blame on him, but Trump is a part of a lot of this too. So I will say that's something I've noticed. But let me be very clear, folks, because you see, for those who may not have seen this, Ben Shapiro has some nerve talking about who interviewed who when he sat down across from Benjamin Netanyahu at this table. This wasn't a virtual conversation. He sat there in person with this genocidal war criminal. So you wanted to talk about who Tucker Carlson had an interview with. That, to me, is what is astounding. Just astounding to me. It's sick. It's disgusting. It's gross. But I'll tell you what this is really about. You want to know why Ben mad? You guys want to know why Big Ben is mad, what they're doing here? They're losing support. They're losing support. You see, for years, I have seen them laugh at people on the left, Ben Shapiro and all of them, say the left is crazy. They can't even figure out if they want to support Bernie Sanders or if they want to support Joe Biden. Remember that? Even though Democratic Party is not technically left. But now it's his party. Now it's the Republican Party. And now he's starting to see a lot of the younger people don't want to support Israel, don't want money going to Israel. A lot of the younger people who are part of the MAGA movement, when they said make America great again, and they wanted to put America first, actually wanted to put America first, not Israel. So they got a problem. Because this is not the days of George W. Bush. The MAGA movement is its own thing. And that's what Trump ran on. That's what people wanted who supported him. And that's what they wanted, to put America first. And people are looking around and they're seeing the grocery prices have not decreased. They're seeing that the prices are increasing, the pay is not increasing, and all these people are getting laid off, and a lot of them being replaced with AI. So to me, that's what this is about. That's why Ben Shapiro is coming after Tucker Carlson. That's why Mark Levin is coming after Tucker Carlson, because he has a large platform, right? Like, everybody knows who Tucker Carlson is. I think that's why they called out Candace Owens, because she has a large platform. I also think that's why, of course, they're calling out Nick Fuentes. They see this splinter that is happening in the MAGA movement, and they're trying to figure out, how do we stop this? That's why Ben puts out this video. I think that Ben Shapiro, I feel like he never moved with the times. It's not 10 years ago. And the world is changing, the country is changing, and more Americans don't want these wars. So it's harder for them to make that case now like they used to. Now we can go to the comments. Let's look at the comments here. Sorry, guys. Again, I have a cold. Bear with me. Here's one. Just debate him. He'd gladly do it. Get back to work, Matt Walsh. Debate him. We're all noticing now. He broke out his biggest yarmulke for this one. Christ is King, America first. Ben, you have no choice but to debate him. It'll be the biggest thing in politics. Americanism, not globalism. Yeah, America first is the new movement, not Israel. These are his viewers. This isn't me. So look at this. The fact that you were so bad faith about his edgy jokes tells me everything I need to know, Ben. Ben Shapiro didn't move with the times. People have changed. The country has changed. And what I hear more and more is that people are tired of these wars. So this whole support for Israel that Ben Shapiro has, and for the evangelical Christians and for others that have been backing and supporting what Israel is doing, yeah, you're facing a problem. Israel can't afford to lose that base. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.